Elections are fought and won on the pledges candidates make. In the run-up to the UK's polls, deepfakes and misinformation are circulating on social media. Is artificial intelligence making it harder to tell political fact from fiction? Hello and welcome to Roundtable. I'm Enda Brady. Now, artificial intelligence was a rudimentary technology the last time British voters went to the ballot box. Now, AI-generated posts and fake audio recordings of political messages are difficult to tell from the real thing. So, how can normal people spot the difference? And what does it all mean for democracy?
In recent months, fake AI-generated recordings of London Mayor Sadiq Khan, Labour leader Keir Starmer and President Joe Biden. His robocall told New Hampshire Democrats not to bother voting in the primaries.
As we talk about deepfakes, the president has been clear that there are risks associated with deepfakes. Fake images and misinformation can be exacerbated by emerging technologies.
Here's Desi, a social robot for good, to explain more.
Deepfakes are fabricated media, often using AI, that appear to be real but are actually manipulated or entirely false. AI can play a crucial role in detecting and preventing deepfakes, but it's also important for humans to be vigilant and fact-check information before sharing it.
A report following the 2016 US presidential election found a widespread misinformation campaign on social media by Russia to influence the outcome. The technology now is more advanced and not just a tool of state actors. 60% of UK voters surveyed in May agree that they are concerned about AI and fake news in the upcoming UK election. But the same technology responsible for the problem can be part of the solution.
So for example, you have watermarking, which is basically an invisible signature, or a digital fingerprint, if you will, that can tell if a piece of digital media, it could be a photo, audio, video, has been altered, or has it been AI generated.
As elections loom in the US and UK, citizens need to be cautious and vigilant. Don't believe everything you see or hear. Navigating this new normal requires a healthy dose of skepticism.
Well, let's meet our guests. Here in the studio with me is Norman Baker. He's a former UK Home Office Minister with the Liberal Democrat Party. He also served under former Prime Minister David Cameron's coalition government from 2010 to 2015. Kelsey Farish is a media and entertainment lawyer and a leading expert on generative AI. And Scarlett MccGwire is a former advisor to the UK's Labour Party. You're all very welcome to Roundtable. Kelsey, I'll come to you first. It was Mark Twain who said that a lie can be halfway around the world before the truth has its boots on. And that was 150 years before AI was even a thing.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And I think that what we are seeing now with the advent of social media is, it takes a microsecond for a lie to make its way halfway around the world. And then the real question becomes, well, how do you stop that lie from spreading or getting even worse?
That's a very good point, Norman, isn't it? This is just, it goes viral for a reason. These are very cleverly made videos, very difficult to detect, yes. And you can be taken in.
And the audio is even easier to deal with than the images. And yes, it can be very convincing. And in fact, as AI has developed, it's become more and more convincing than it was when AI first started, which is one of the reasons, perhaps, why the authorities in different countries didn't take it as seriously as they might have done. But it's very worrying because it has a potential to destabilise democracies, particularly if foreign powers that are antagonistic towards our country decide to get involved. They can try and influence the elections to their own advantage by dissing candidates and other parties. And I'm sure some of that will be apparent in the US election later on this year. And there isn't a simple answer to it. I wish, as a politician, I knew what the answer was, but I don't. But what I do know is that it has potential to be deeply destabilising.
You served in government, you've run for Parliament, you've been elected. How worried would you be if deep fake video popped up with you spouting some policy or some wacko theory that you categorically would never adhere to?
Well, I'll come back to your Mark Twain quote. It would be easy to prove to me, to my own satisfaction, I didn't make that particular quote. I could issue a statement saying I was in somewhere else, I've got an alibi for that or whatever. But the trouble is that nobody should hear that. But in a sense, that's not new. You could have a newspaper making an allegation about someone on the front page, and that can go back decades. And then when they finally have to confess that they've made it up for political advantage, because papers are biased in different directions, then there's an apology on page 94, which nobody ever sees.
Scarlett, tell me, how worried should we be? An election just a matter of days away now in the UK. Everyone's talking about it. We've seen a fair scrap between the politicians, for better or worse, whatever their policies. How worried should we be about these kind of deep fakes and misinformation?
We just don't know. I mean, that's the whole problem, isn't it? Is we don't know what's going down. I mean, the problem with a deep fake is that even if you say it wasn't me, that it's an image you never get out of your mind. So we have no idea. But I mean, you know, what I found quite shocking is, I think just today or yesterday, there was a Conservative Party thing that they admitted they'd done. It was photoshopped to have, and it was saying, you know, the dictators will be pleased that Keir Starmer is Prime Minister. And it was Keir Starmer, who I don't think he's ever met Kim Il-jung in his life, being applauded by him. So actually, it's that sort of image that you don't, I mean, that's what's so awful, is you don't even need AI. And one thinks of AI as being done by sort of rogue people, you know, but to have this done by the mainstream is and we shouldn't allow it. I mean, we really have to do something. It really does. And look at the American election, where when Hillary Clinton was standing, that they decided that she was part of a satanic circle operating from a pizza place. I mean, you know, that's the problem, is that once people want to believe something, you feed it in and it goes.
Talking of the United States, let's take a look at some examples. So, researcher Hani Farid at the University of California, Berkeley, is keeping track of deep fake cases in the run-up to the US election. Examples on his website include an AI image of Biden in military fatigues, seemingly on the verge of authorizing military strikes, and this one of Donald J. Trump purportedly meeting young black voters who had flagged down his convoy. This is all very, very strange stuff. Why are people putting that out there? I mean, is it to try and get votes from young black people?
Well, there are a lot of different reasons why someone would want to make synthetic or false information. And those reasons can range from just personal gratification, you're having a bit of a laugh with your mates, to you just want to cause a bit of trouble and push boundaries and go viral, perhaps. Another thing that people often do is they create content because it fits their own worldview, and it's almost like playing out a fantasy. And then on the very extreme side, you have people who are genuinely trying to influence people's decision making. And what I mean by that is, if you have a reason to try to influence people to vote a particular way, you want to influence their decision making, their agency, you could say, well, maybe if they have a little nudge in the right direction, or what I perceive to be right, putting people that look like them in this image with Donald Trump, maybe that will sway. So again, there are as many different reasons as there are people on this planet. But something that I did want to emphasize, and both Norman and Scarlett said this, a moment ago, is, it's easy to disprove something perhaps as, oh, this is fake, I wasn't there. But the other thing that we need to be very conscious of is now authentic content can be put out there, and a politician could say, well, that's not me. I didn't actually do that naughty thing. That's a deep fake. And this concept is called the liar's dividend. And it's really important to emphasize that generative AI and synthetic media, it's speaking to a broader issue, which is public distrust in what we see. We can no longer really believe what we see.
So
and that's
you call
serious.
It liar's dividend. Donald Trump, I guess, Norman, calls it fake news if he doesn't like something he sees.
Absolutely. I mean, Donald Trump is the epitome of this, I think, when it comes to it. I mean, he denies everything, doesn't he, if it suits him, and he makes up his own truth. He even calls it his own truth. Alternative facts, I think they called it in his regime. So it is very worrying indeed. But, in one sense, this isn't new. And I'm interested in the remedy. But let's take Scarlett's point about the Tories and this allegation in Image that Keir Starmer was friends with Kim Jong-un. I mean, in a sense, that's libelous because it's character assassination and it's making him out to be something he's entirely not, to his detriment. That, in my view, is libel. But the reality is the remedy for that is a long process. You might be able to prove it in court in due course, but the election will be long gone by that point. You have to be able to deal with this right away. So that's the real challenge we've got. But in a sense, that's no different to how it was, because you could have a situation where a newspaper of the right-wing persuasion, say, would have said something unhelpful about a Labour leader or a Lib Dem leader in the past. It may have been entirely untrue. They may have had to apologise for it, but it's a long way down the track. So all that's happened really is this is just existing processes, existing behaviour, but with bells on.
Scarlett, this is the first election really where AI is at a stage, it's so advanced now, it's so clever, it's all so believable. 5 years ago, it was kind of in its infancy. It was not an issue, but now it's very, very sophisticated, isn't it? And it's believable stuff. What pops up, you can believe what you're seeing.
I know, and that's what we don't know what's real and what's not real anymore. And the people who do it, they're going to be putting it as people's Facebook and things. They're not going to be doing it majorly, but it's going to be aimed at certain people. And as I say, what I worry about is once you've got an image, you can't get it out of your head, and it does influence you. And it's there's little things like the Shadow Health Secretary, Wes Streeting, asked about Diane Abbott, was heard to say this didn't happen, but they put the audio in with him calling her a silly woman, right? Which does it matter? Well, it doesn't. Is it believable? It's believable enough, and people will say, look, there are people who believe that the Earth is flat and we never went to the moon. That is the problem, is that you believe what you want to believe, and AI plays into it.
Kelsey, who's behind all this? Is it political parties? Is it foreign governments trying to unsettle things in the UK once more?
Yes, it's lots of different actors, and this is what makes enforcement so difficult. In plain English, what this means is it's not just people we can point to, let's say a state operated bot farm out of Russia or something like that. It's also people not unlike those of us sitting around this table, making content on our phones and then sharing it, or, you often have young people or disgruntled individuals who again want to cause some problems or stir up some trouble. They create a deep fake very easily on their phone, and then they upload it to Twitter and see what happens. So not only do we have individuals, but we also have very large-scale state-supported bot farms and computer hackers and so on. And again, a lot of these people are hiding behind the shield of anonymity online, which for various reasons I think is a good thing, generally speaking, but it makes tracking down these people who are doing this harmful content really, really difficult.
And I guess, Norman, the police, you've worked closely at the Home Office, obviously, you know the strain on resources. If a politician rings up the police and says, I don't like this video, I've seen it myself on social media, the police have bigger things to be worrying about.
Well, the police sometimes take action which is not entirely justified, like pursuing Angela Rayner with a huge number of people, over £2,000 in her alleged abuse. However, the point I think I would make is this, that if you have a situation where a deep fake or something has occurred and it's provable, then there should be a remedy for that. But what do people do if they don't believe what they see anymore, and they don't believe what they see anymore? The social media sector is a Wild West. Nobody's really controlling it. So you're driven back, or people like me are driven back, to broadcast media in this country, because in this country, for all its faults, we do have Ofcom, and we have a requirement for broadcast media to be accurate and balanced. So, we can say, if you're not sure, watch the BBC, watch ITV, watch Channel 4, and they will be responsible in their coverage. But the reality is fewer and fewer people are getting their news now from those sectors.
And just on that point, Kelsey, I notice a lot of young people are all over TikTok. This is becoming a primary source of news,
right.
yeah?
And it's great because it's bringing, TikTok and other social media platforms are bringing important information to people who otherwise might feel disenfranchised from more traditional media outlets. I would say, however, that we do have rules in place regarding the content that appears on social media. It's not just the law that's on the statute books, but it's also those social media platforms' terms and conditions. So, for example, under Twitter, now X, you can't actually impersonate someone. You can't spread, very offensive child abuse photos, for example. But
what if you do, though? What if you do?
Well, this is the issue, is how does that content get taken down? You need someone to report it in the first instance, so it's relying on other people to draw it to the attention of the social media platforms. And then, at the end of the day, it's up to the social media platform itself to decide whether or not it violated the rules and whether or not to take it down. And the problem we have here is, unlike traditional news media, where you have a studio and executives and very intelligent people who are presenters and so on.
Let's hope so.
On social media, it's all about user-generated content. It's about the things that any person can upload. And this is great because it democratizes information and access and conversation and so on. But it also means, who is responsible for the stuff that I put out there? Really important questions about free speech.
The remedy is retrospective with social media.
That's right, unless you have a blocker on it,
whereas with traditional media, traditional broadcast media, not newspapers, traditional broadcast media is not retrospective, it's in advance.
Scarlett, have we reached a stage that the horse hasn't just bolted, it's several fields away? Should the British government have done more in terms of regulation of AI before this point?
I mean, of course they should. I mean, but frankly, all governments should have done there were people saying AI is dangerous, this is going to happen, and it was easier to say, oh, no, the tech companies can deal with it, because that's how it's going to be used. Well, we know, as Kelsey says, they don't, right? I mean, if we take really serious stuff like child harm to children, they don't do it. They don't do enough. I mean, we went from one stage where I think it was Facebook, you couldn't have a woman breastfeeding because that was seen as you might see her nipple, to serious child pornography, not on Facebook, that is still allowed by a lot of things. And then we have the whole argument about freedom of speech. And that is that we get into that one and we lose the other things that are happening.
The freedom of speech is not absolute. I mean, we have to have guardrails. There, not just in the United States, where I'm originally from, with the First Amendment and so on, but also at the European level and, of course, here in the United Kingdom. There is a certain responsibility that each of us have when we engage in public discourse.
Yes, because a American judge said, it doesn't give you the right to shout fire in a crowded cinema. That was one of the things. But you can burn the American flag. And I think it's really, really important that this is dealt with properly.
Norman, on the election campaign trail, we've seen some strange things happen that deepfakes couldn't have generated.
Yes.
Rishi Sunak announcing the election in a downpour. He then
Drowning
goes
Street,
to
yes.
D-Day, 80th anniversary of D-Day, and leaves early. A lot of kind of strange things that, had you wanted to script something damaging on AI, you literally couldn't have made this stuff up.
Well, you might also say Ed Davey in his various activities during his water activities up and down the country. No, I mean, it's been a quite bizarre election in many ways, and the result will be even more bizarre, I think, when it occurs. But yes, I mean, would this be AI? It could be AI. If someone sees Ed Davey falling into a pond, would that be AI? No, it actually happened.
Kelsey, give me your opinion on legislating for this. Obviously, there is going to be a new government, whether it's a Conservative one or Labour, but July the 5th there will be... Or a coalition, the Liberal Democrats, your own party, Norman, could be in there. But do you think, in all the talk during the 6-week campaign, they talk about jobs, migration, health service, dentists, police officers, doctors. AI hasn't been mentioned.
That's right, and I should be really clear that my answer is one as a lawyer, as a regulated professional, and perhaps doesn't align with my own personal views as a young mother, as someone who has a lot of concerns about AI, generally speaking. But from a lawyer's perspective, the United Kingdom has taken a very pro-innovation approach. And what that means is Rishi Sunak and co. have said, we want to let the market play out. We want to let the innovators do their thing. We don't want to chill free speech. We want to encourage this exciting, innovative new world of AI.
To make money.
Well, your words, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to debate those. Again, when you look at that and compare it to what you see in the European Union, which, like the GDPR, the data protection laws that came out of the EU, they take a slightly different approach, which is protection of the consumer. Now, some people might say that's over-regulating, but from my perspective, the new AI Act, which has just been agreed and will come into law soon,